Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of One Take because life has no rehearsal. And today I am truly honored to welcome a longtime friend of mine, Javier Mantilla. So, Javier was born in Quito, speaks perfect Portuguese, was raised in Sao Paulo, and like me, he is a total 100% ad guy. We're talking about somebody who's worked in advertising, loves advertising, grew up in advertising, still works in advertising. I mean, total ad guy. He's worked for some of the biggest names in the industry, Ogilvy and Mather, who is one of the most respected and cerebral ad agencies in history. He worked for Publicis, Starcom, which was the largest, still is the largest media buying concern, I think, at least in Latin America and the US. I mean, they're like the behemoth. They're like the 9,000 pound Hummer, that we have today. I mean, these things are big. We crossed paths at IPG's McCann Erickson, which is probably one of the best known brands. And today he is the director of Cheil Miami, which is closely allied with one of the most progressive companies that I also work with, which is Samsung. Samsung
Yep.
is one of the most progressive electronic companies in the world. So, Javier, welcome and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Marcelo. It's a pleasure. And as you said it, this advertising world, when I saw the series Mad Men, and I was actually lucky enough to be at our global headquarters in New York City working for McCann, for Universal McCann, when we did the closing party, because of course the party
Yeah.
closes when they join McCann. And so I was at that party on the West 33rd Street building. So to me, it was like I am truly a madman.
Yes. We were part of a culture, man. McCann was everything that was like, I was going to say wrong with the world, but it was what it was, man. Like it was like a boys club. It was rough. When I was recruited for McCann, I was told by Gordon Link two things. One, we're practicing adults. If you take, you have to give. If you give, you're gonna take.
That's right.
And then the other thing he told me was, "This is McCann. No quarter asked, no quarter given. We just want people, winners." So you've worked for some really great agencies, amazing agencies, actually. So tell me more because all of us, I think we've had this moment that defined us professionally, and we don't even know it happened until like it happened. Like,
That's right.
as it happens, we don't have a conscience of, oh my God, yeah, this is defining me professionally. So, what was yours?
Well, mine was really interesting. I was sitting in Sao Paulo working for Ogilvy, and in the David room, and just the lore of it all. And we were sitting with Unilever to pitch them on this whole Dove idea of the campaign of real beauty. And of course, Sao Paulo was is a creative hub and a strategic hub. And my role was really talking to the heads of Unilever how to do this. And of course, I had come from a digital background. And when I get to Sao Paulo, they're like, hey, you're going to be running media at Ogilvy. You're going to be working with us. And I get there, and it's only about 15% of my job is digital. Everything else is traditional. And I was like, oh my God, what is this all about? But then when real beauty comes about, it's like I can really sink my teeth into it because it is about digital. It is about seeding content. It is about, back then, of course, it was YouTube. We didn't have all these other channels. And I felt such at home with it. And I didn't realize what we had in our hands and what it became. And it's only as you look back and go, oh my God, I was in the middle of this, first of all, cultural revolution where it was content became king. But the second thing is influencer marketing in a certain way, but content being distributed across many platforms and the change of media from being, the traditional out of home and all of this, but thinking about it holistically, but at the same time, the channels were changing. And so I think for me, that was the most fascinating thing to look back and say, I was part of this revolution that I never really expected.
Well, and that brings me to another thing. Like me, you've been like, I guess, in every country in Latin America.
Yep. Every single
Just to be
one.
clear, I've only not been to four, not even that, three countries in Latin America. I
The
haven't
three
been to
Guyanas.
Bolivia. Yeah, that's it. I haven't been to Bolivia. I haven't been to Suriname, and I haven't been to Guyana.
Yep, yep.
But I went.
I've missed the three Guyanas, but I have been to Bolivia. I've been to La Paz and to Santa Cruz de la Sierra.
Oh,
So I've made every market from, of course, now I've been to Canada, of course, so from Toronto down to Buenos Aires, every single market, most Caribbean islands, British Caribbean islands. So I've been from actually Martinique, Guadeloupe, or the French ones, all the way south, every single island.
yeah.
So it's yeah, it's pretty hectic.
And also, you and I were present at creation when cable came on, and then like this, and then digital. I mean, I was present at every one of those.
Yep.
But there were a lot of changes that we could see coming. For example, in Chile, I remember firing the media director because he said the internet doesn't exist and it will never amount to anything. And you
Yep.
could just see right then and there that the internet was going to take over. But there's a lot of changes that, in looking back, we probably say, dude, in 1,000 years, I could have never seen that coming.
Yep.
What's yours? I'm not going to
Mine
go
is
into mine.
no, the mine really was the death of strategic planning. I knew great planners, Will Weissman, one of the great planners that's still around today, right? Worked with me at McCann, went over to PhD. I mean, just a very, very great guy. Sylvia Curiat, that I know very well. And when suddenly everybody shifted to programmatic, for some reason, strategic planning from that great way we used to do it disappeared because it then became just audience planning, and then it was all
Ah,
done programmatically. So I think that, and coming from a digital background, the rise of the DMP for me was so exciting. Oh my God, we're going to do things in a better way, more efficient way. But I never thought we were going to kill off strategy in such a terrible way. Because if you look at it now, it's all about tactics. And we've had this conversation many times about how tactics, it's you try this, you try that, you try that. But unless you look back at the strategic imperatives, and that is missing in a lot of thinking today.
wow. Yeah, no, I had never thought about that, as a matter of fact. But it is true. I mean, like, I started buying programmatic when it was launched. Actually, when it was created, I launched Equifax in the Hispanic market, 100% programmatic, and we even used dynamic creative optimization 10 years ago when it was invented.
Yep.
And it is
Yep.
true. There's no more strategic planning. That is
Yep.
very funny. But coming as you were from all of the different disciplines that actually contribute and build strategic planning, because strategic planning is built out of many things:
Sure.
customer research, insights, creative, media, analysis. I mean, it is like the
It's a
umbrella.
process. Yep.
How do you cope? What do you do?
Well, nowadays it's you're trying to build out that, and I think back of my Ogilvy days, right? Because we had the butterfly. It's like, where is the brand going? Where is the brand today? And what's that roadmap? And then looking at all of that data, which, David had the butterfly. So David Ogilvy actually himself in one of his many books had this whole thing about the butterfly because you start and it's like the wings. So you start at one side, you go to the middle, distill the brand. So it's like, how do you distill it? What does it mean? What does it mean to you as a consumer? What does it mean to me as an owner? And where do I want to go? And so for me, that process has to be real understanding what happens. And I think that is the way I still kind of look at it, kind of old school, kind of very David Ogilvy. I mean, it's funny because I do think that even up to today, he's just such a great example of the thinking. Even though I got to work at Starcom, and that's Leo Burnett, and he was a visionary. And even when I worked at different agencies that were built by different people, I worked at Zuby, and Tere Zuby was such a presence, even though she was no longer
Yep.
there. But it was about a little more than just a presence of the person. It was kind of the process.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think all of us have coped one way or another. I have retained some of the old school elements of branding. I used to tell Colgate ages ago that they needed to invest in branding. And I remember somebody asking me, like, why? I said, well, it's the only thing that really, stands between you and commodity pricing. Let's go to a supermarket. I launched Colgate Total in Mexico, like 6 years before they launched it in the US, for one reason, by the way, which is really funny. Triclosan, which is the main ingredient in Colgate Total, is actually poisonous.
Oh,
That's why it kills bacteria.
Mexicans, what the hell?
But in Mexico, like, it's, okay, fine, we trust that you're
So,
gonna not put a poisonous amount of triclosan in your toothpaste because And in the U.S., the whatever regulating body, the EPA, I guess, or whatever, whoever
the FDA or whatever.
regulates,
Yeah.
yeah, they said no. You got to show us that in fact, you're not going to poison people. So it took 6 years more, but I launched it, and we invested in branding, Colgate Total. It was very, very brand oriented, and it only had the one promise:
Yep.
it killed bacteria for 12 hours. Period. That's it. So one promise, very clean, but it was Colgate Total. So I took some of the guys to a supermarket and I said, like, look at some of these brands, man. They sell, I don't know, like, I don't even remember, like fluorocarril and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
They sold for like 89 cents a tube of 100 grams. 89 cents, 79 cents, whatever. And I said, like, we're selling at 229. You could buy three of these things
Yep.
for essentially one of ours. And the only thing that's, opening the pocketbook of the typical housewife who comes to the supermarket, Superamas and Aurreras and all of that, is the fact that there is a Colgate brand behind it. Otherwise, so branding like I believe in it because it does add to the purchasing decision.
It totally does. It totally does. Branding, one of the things I tell people, and actually somebody who I listen to a lot, Scott Galloway, who's a pretty smart guy, and he's a junk professor at NYU in marketing and whatnot. He always says, show me brands that have equity, that people know what the brand stands for, and in an economic downturn, they're the ones that are still making money. It's that simple. So to me, it is really about being mission critical about your business is making sure your brand has equity. And the only way to create that equity is for people to know what the brand stands for, what it does for me, why is it important to me. And that's all branding that we need to do as ad agencies.
Oh, yeah. I absolutely. I mean, I'm 100% there with you. So tell me more. I mean, like, we're neighbors, you and I mean, like, my office is in the building next to yours and all of that, so we see each other a bit. What's in store for 2025 for you? Like, I don't even like medium term, I want like tomorrow. What are we doing tomorrow?
It's interesting, right? So we're pivoting and really trying to understand how to make a difference in the Hispanic market. One of the things I've been talking about, writing articles about, I was very, very, very pleased that my article came out on Hispanic Ad this week, talking about the prism and why I talk about prism versus focus. And both of us are photographers. Marcelo knows when we focus, when we look, and I love taking pictures. You kind of zoom into something, right? And so what you do is you kind of lose a perspective of everything around, and you're looking at one point. And a lot of marketing has become that, very looking into a point. And I said, well, the difference is if you look at a prism, prism has two different things that happen. One is, of course, refraction. So as light comes in, it bends. But the other thing is dispersion, right? And so that's, of
Yeah.
course, all of us that are of age that love Pink Floyd, the famous picture of the light beam going into the
Yes.
prism and coming out across all the shades. And I tell people, well, that's what marketing should actually be. You're looking at a brand, which is that light beam hitting the prism, and then understanding what each one of those wavelengths, which are the different colors, actually mean for that brand because they're part of it. And so when people try to deconstruct, and I've taken a lot of hell for saying, you think about things in a total market capacity because it's looking at the total. They're like, no, 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 you need to split it up. And when you split it up, it's going back to focusing. However, Prism really lets me see where each one of those colors lands. Where in the spectrum is it? Is it a high bandwidth or low bandwidth? And so when we think about Hispanic marketing in that way, and we talk about not just acculturation or using Spanish language or anything like that, but really being able to understand content, context, and language in the right way. Because I was having fun with this the other day. I was telling people, somebody was telling me they did un batido de lechuza, and I'm like, what the hell is that?
Lechosa
And
or lechuza?
lechosa,
Lechuzas,
lechosa
lechuza, yeah.
from Venezuela, right? So I was like, what? And suddenly they eat tajadas. I'm like, what are tajadas? And I've been all over the place, and I actually have family in Venezuela, but I never heard tajadas. And so then you start to understand, especially because of the high influx of Venezuelans into the US marketplace today, that we really need to understand language in a better way. And that's what made me think about the prism. It really is about that. Looking at things in a way that encompasses but gives the right ponderations. And we don't do that, right? We treat all Hispanics as Mexican in many ways. And that's the first thing I say is that not all Hispanics are Mexican. And second thing, we're all not reggaetoneros. We're not all 18 to 25.
I am
So
heavy metal.
exactly, but both of us are, right. And so when I look at that, I say there needs to be a better way to communicate. And so the prism to me is the best example of it. And so what I'm trying to bring into the thinking for Cheil for 2025 is that difference. Think differently, specifically for the Hispanic market.
No, that's absolutely great. I really like your mental image of the prism. Uh, m- Not only for the wavelength itself, I can see where a brand appeals in many different ways to many different people,
Yep.
but at the same time, it all originates in from the brand. Just to give you an example, um, ages ago, I bought a Cadillac for my wife, an SRX, really cool car, and then she, at some point when she turned, I guess, 65 or something like that, she um, she she just called me up and she says, "Listen, you see a Cadillac in the garage? Get rid of it. I'm done." And I was like, "Yes, sir. Anything else, sir?" And she goes, "Yeah, I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna buy a car." Okay, great. Go out and buy a car. Fantastic. So she buys a Mercedes, and to her, in contrast, let's say to my dad, when he bought a Mercedes, when my dad bought a Mercedes when we first came into the US, it was the Prestige.
Mhm.
Because in Spain, of course, Mercedes was super expensive and nobody could afford it.
Yeah,
So,
everybody was driving sad.
oh, we also had a Citroen CX, by the way.
Oh, okay, nice, nice.
So yeah, that thing cost $24,000 in 1974, just so you know. But the Mercedes was even more expensive. So he bought it, and it was more like a prestige, a status kind of thing. My wife had none of that association with the Mercedes at all. Couldn't care less. She bought it because it is ultra super reliable and very well made. Period.
Sure.
And she
Yep.
wanted and she only drives 2 miles to work and 2 miles back. That's it. That's all she does. But so the Mercedes brand then in your scheme, which I find fascinating, opens up to many wavelengths, and one of the wavelengths is the wavelengths that hits my wife. It's a reliable car. This thing is not going to fail me.
That's
As
right.
opposed to my dad, which probably had another wavelength, which is, oh, it's prestigious. All of my neighbors I know, will know
Exactly.
that I have.
Luxury, and now you look good. Exactly.
So yeah, no, I absolutely love it. So and of course, I wish you the best in the Hispanic market.
Thank you.
So just to close it off, one question, because I am gonna put all of these answers into like a single article, and I'm
Sure.
gonna just do something with it. You're standing in front of a CEO or a CMO, and that person is going to hire a candidate. That person has candidates, or they have candidates from many different ages, from, I don't know, 30, 40 to 55 plus. What do you tell that CEO or that CMO why consider the 55 plus to be, like, the best solution? What's your insight?
Well, it happened to me a couple of years ago. I took some folks from New York to Mexico City to the IAB Conecta, maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And as we're walking in, these folks from New York, people kept stopping and saying hello to me, right? And then, so we're going into this event, IAB, blah, blah, blah. And then afterwards, we're having dinner. And at dinner, there's people from different media companies and agencies, and we're telling stories. And at the end of the night, we get back to the hotel, and she's now the head of Getty Images for Latin America, Juliet, who's Dutch. And she looks at me and goes, "You have a lot of stories and history." And I'm like, "That's right, because I'm old enough to have lived quite a bit. I've made a few mistakes. I've always done things from the heart. And of course, why I love advertising, it's passion, right? It's all about the passion of doing." So I said, "So I don't think I've made mistakes knowingly or to do something wrong, but from the heart. But I've made a lot, far from being perfect." And so to the point is, why I think we're valuable, and looking at my life after 55 is because, I know I've seen the mistakes I've made, and I've got stories. So I can sit with you and share some of that life. And hopefully that will contribute to thinking differently. And I've always been about think differently, right? Be open, open to change, open to what new realities can happen. But it is about, what I've lived, and I've lived a good life, and I'm proud of the things I've done.
Yep.
So it is about life. That's why.
And you should be. Yep. So anyway, thank you very much, Javi. I'll see you around next week. Today's Friday. I'm working from home mainly because I'm waiting for Comcast, which didn't come yesterday. But I'll see you around the week, and we'll have a cafecito and a
For
croissant
sure.
or something.
For sure, my
Okay,
friend.
man.
Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Take care.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye.